Hey guys, it's Lex at lexmarshreads. Welcome back to my channel. Happy New Year. This was supposed to be up yesterday, but I lost my footage. And by lost my footage, I mean I wasn't recording for almost all of it. So here we be. Today we're talking about the 10 worst. Oh, I feel weird saying worst. My least 10. Okay, English. My 10 least favorite books of 2020. Without further ado, let's just do it. And I'm going, much like I did in my favorite 10 books, I'm going to be doing I guess it's backwards. I'm going to be doing my favorite, the highest ranking of the 10, down to my least favorite book of the year. Okay, yeah. Let's try. Okay. Number 10, or the highest ranked book of my least favorite books of the year. I actually didn't dislike this book when I read it. You might remember me talking about it. I read it in January, I think. Yeah, January of 2020, and that was The Merciless, which is behind me right here in my bookshelf. I'm popping up pictures because I only own 2 of them in hard copies, and one of them I don't know where it is. This book was fine. It's a horror book about a girl who moves to a new town and ends up in with this group, and the leader of the group decides we need to perform an exorcism on this weird girl we go to school with. So the book is following an amateur exorcism. It's YA horror. I liked it a lot more than I feel looking back on it. I feel like it's kind of meh. If you like YA horror, you might like it. There's 8 books in this series, and I've heard they're all kind of the same. I don't not recommend it. It's just very fine. It's very meh. I think I gave it 4 or 5 stars when I read it the first time. I since have dropped it down, I think, to 3 stars, I think was what I settled on. And I mean, I still have it on my shelf. I didn't hate it enough to immediately want to get rid of it. Obviously, I thought it was pretty good when I read it. Just looking back on it, I think it was kind of, everything was obvious. The writing was fine, but it was, kind of forgettable, I guess, is what I'm going to say. It was just kind of a forgettable read for me. Number 9 is You Are Not Alone. I read this book in, was it March for the Literally Dead Book Club that Kayla at Books and Lala, she runs a book club, thriller, horror, thriller, mostly thriller book club. And I read An Anonymous Girl. Yes, before I read You Are Not Alone. Actually, I think it was April. But it was really eh. It was a very meh experience reading it. I didn't like it very much. I didn't hate it, but I didn't like the protagonist, and I didn't love the story, and I thought that the plot twist was bad. I thought it was bad. I just didn't like it. I thought it was shitty. It was just a shitty plot twist, and I feel bad about it. I'll link down below my wrap-up for that month where I talk about it, if you want to hear my more in-depth thoughts. But all I have to say is that I think the plot twist ruined it for me. And it was probably just I didn't even love it before the plot twist, but then the plot twist just, boo. I didn't like it. 8, I feel kind of bad about this one too. That's The Guy on the Right. This book was fine. This book was okay. The reason it's so low is because it's just not something I ever would have picked up for myself. I read it for my reading Chandler Ainsley, her favorite books, when I did my road test for her. Yes, which I will link down below. That's why I'm pointing down. And I read that for that, and I liked it. It was pretty high on my list at the beginning of the year because it was one of the first 15 books I read. And then I just, once again, kind of like The Merciless, it was just kind of forgettable. It's a new adult romance about some college students. The main male character, I think his name was Theo, if I remember right. I might be wrong. he's roommate with like the quarterback of the football team, so his roommate was super popular and all the girls were into him, and he's like the guy on the right in all of the pictures. And he meets this girl and they fall in love, and there's some issues, and they're like, we'll just be friends, and then they start having sex. It was like a whole thing. It was okay. It was fine. I think I gave it either 3 or 4 stars. I don't even remember what I rated most of these books. I'm so sorry. The next one I feel a little bit bad about because it's an arc. Actually 3 of the books that were my least favorite books of the year were arcs, all of which I requested, so I did this to myself. But 7 is the Lost City of Hercules. It was okay. I really liked the art style. It wasn't what I wanted it to be. I can't even explain to you really what it is. So you have these 2 kids are looking for one of they're not siblings, but one of them, their father went missing like years before, and so they go out into this submarine and end up kind of in this like alternate dimension where there's a war of the gods happening, and they end up like in the middle of this war. That was that. I think I gave it 3 stars. I think it was not very good. I don't really recommend it. 6 is also an arc that I requested. That's Synthesizing Gravity. This was a book of essays by a poet, and it was just kind of like, it was like fine. It was what I expected it to be, but it was kind of like meandering and rambling, and there were some good thoughts, but altogether I thought it was kind of pedantic, and I didn't think it really needed to, it was a little bit too superfluous for me, a little bit too pretentious, maybe, is the word I'm going to use. That was mean. Oh, I feel bad. I think I gave it 3 stars. I think. I might have given it 2 stars. It's really niche. I feel like I don't really need to talk about it because I feel like very few of my viewers are going to be like, yes, I would love to read a book of essays by a renowned poet. That's like a really specific subset of people that I think are into that kind of thing. Number 5 is another arc that I requested. This is the last one, I think. Oh, God. And that's Now Then and Everyone, which was fine. It was kind of long and kind of boring. Not gonna lie, it was just kind of boring. It was about time travel. It was this, like, sci-fi, like, time travel agency, and they, like, go back to study. Like, they're, like, historians, kind of, and they go back to study, and a separate, like, person goes back in time because they find one of the, like, time traveling devices, and stuff starts changing, like the future, like, the time-space continuum, stuff starts being changed, and so that's what that was about. It was I just was bored. Like, it was fine, I just thought it was kind of boring. You know how sci-fi can really really easily tip into the, like, okay, like, and, oh no, 4, I have quite a bit to say about this one. 4 is 8 Perfect Murders. I hated this book. Okay, I might have been nicer about it when I reviewed it, when I read it, but the more I look back on it, the angrier I am about it. I was so excited for this. I thought this was going to be, like, my favorite thriller I'd ever read, because the premise of the premise is so good. The execution of the premise was not my cup of tea at all. I didn't like it. First of all, I hated the main character, which is fine, because sometimes I like a good unlikable narrator. Sometimes I like a good unreliable narrator. Almost all of the time. I love unreliable narrators. It's one of my favorite things in fiction. And we have an unlikable, unreliable narrator, but we're following this man whose name I don't remember, who owns this little, like, thriller horror bookshop. And, like, a decade before, he had written an article, because the bookstore had, like, a blog, about the 8 perfect murders in crime fiction, thrillers, etc. And an FBI agent comes to him and is like, hi, dude, you know this article you wrote? Well, someone is killing people using your list. And so he, like, teams up with the FBI agent to, like, figure out what's happening. And to be perfectly honest, I probably should have expected to like this less than I was expecting because I was super, super excited about it. But I don't usually like crime novels. Like, anytime we're following a detective or a cop or an agent or anything, I'm usually not interested. Like, I just don't care. I don't want to follow detectives. I don't like procedural, like, books. I don't like crime fiction. I love thrillers and I love horrors, but I'm not a huge fan of crime fiction. And this is like half thriller, half crime fiction. I hated the main character. He was a pretentious piece of shit. He was obnoxious. I hated him. I hated him to the point where it was like almost unbearable to read. I started like skimming in the middle because I just couldn't care anymore. I just couldn't care. And then the ending was obvious and also unsatisfying. 2 stars. I don't recommend, but a lot of people love it. A lot of people love A Perfect Murders, which was one of the reasons I was so excited for it. So if it sounds like something you think you would love, go, don't not read it on my behalf, because it wasn't my cup of tea. It does not mean it's not yours, but oh my goodness, it pissed me off. Number 3, another one that I just like didn't hate it as much. I didn't think I hated it as much as I did until I kept thinking about it. That's Murder Trending. This book I hated it. It was awful. I hated it. And it was another one where I think it was partially my fault because I had such high expectations, because on paper, it's like the promise of the premise is perfect for me, right? It's this dystopian-esque, like Black Mirror, sci-fi-ish, like warning of the future where we send criminals to Alcatraz 2.0 where they're on this reality TV show getting murdered, right? That seems fun, and we follow this girl who's innocent and she's on the island trying to figure out how to get the hell out. And the idea of that sounds perfection. I loved the idea. I started it last year in 2019, DNF'd it, and then in 2020, I think this was the first book I read in 2020, but I picked it up again and was like, I'm gonna read it this time. I'm gonna do it. It's gonna be great. And then it wasn't great. The plot twists were bad. I didn't like them. The ending felt cheap to me. There's more books in the series. I will not ever be reading them. I'm probably gonna actually unhaul it at some point. That's the one that I don't know where it is, that I like have the hard copy, but I don't know where it is. All of the rest of them were ebooks, except for the Merciless and Murder Trending. Everything else was an ebook, so at least I don't have, like, bad books cluttering my shelves. Oh, my. Number 2 is The Wicked Deep. This book, you might remember me talking about this book. You might remember it. I had some choice words to say about this book, because this book, I loved this book until the ending. And the ending was bad. It was bad. And it wasn't even like a little bit bad. It like ruined the book so hard for me that I might have even given this 1 star. Like, oh my god. The writing style, gorgeous. The writing is stunning. The characters were interesting. There was this weird, like, insta-love thing going on, which I'm not a super huge fan of insta-love a lot of the time. I like a little bit of pining in my life. But there was insta-love. The main character was okay. There's this bait-and-switch plot twist that I knew was coming. Like, I saw it coming a million miles away. I read, like, the 2nd page of the book and, like, knew where it was going. So the plot twist itself wasn't what ruined it for me. It was the very, very ending. Absolutely took any enjoyment I had of this book and, like a glass vase, just shattered it and then stomped on the shards. So upset about it. I would like to pick up some of the author's other work, because I think that maybe a different book by the same author might be everything I've ever wanted. This one, however, was not. But a lot of people, once again, a lot of people love it, so don't let me be the thing that keeps you from reading it if you're really interested. Although, I am warning you, it's not that great. Not a huge fan. I don't love to see it. And my least favorite book of the year. You might know. You might see it coming. I read it at the very beginning of the year, and nothing ever quite topped it in my just like, I read it for a video. I read it for my Chandler Ainsley road test. I feel a little bad that 2 of the books that I read for her thing were this low, but one of them was in my top 10 books of the year, and then the other 2 were both pretty high. So I didn't hate all of them, just these 2. Punk 57 by, I think, Penelope Douglas might be one of my least favorite books I've ever read. I'm still not convinced that the main characters and love interests even liked each other. Even a little bit. Not convinced that that happened. Not convinced that they even liked each other. And I was supposed to buy into this romance and I didn't. It was very like enemies to lovers, or like friends to enemies to lovers, or like hate to love, which on the whole isn't super my thing, but there are definitely books that have done it that I'm like, top tier, we love to see it, it's phenomenal. This one was not that. I have never read a book so quickly because I hated it before. I read it in one sitting because I wanted it to be over. I wanted it to stop. I hated it that much. But I was reading it for a video, so I felt guilty DNFing it. I would have DNF'd it in the first 25 pages had I picked it up myself. It's like, it was weird because it was like kind of YA because they were high schoolers, but there was sex scenes, so like kind of adult. Oh God, it was just made me really uncomfortable. It made me really uncomfortable to read. And that's saying something, because I read a like step sibling romance story for that video and liked it. So like the fact that this book like made me feel weird, it says something, and it says something bad, and maybe it says something bad about me. I'm not entirely sure, but I will link my Chandler Ainsley road test down below if you want to hear me rant more about this book. But I was not a fan. It's not a fan of this book. It's a no from me. And there you have it, my 10 least favorite books of the year. On the whole, I did really, really well this year. I liked most of the books I read. My average Goodreads rating was a 4.2, I think. So I read a lot of really good books that I loved this year. This collection of books just happened to not be it. I have some fun videos coming up for you that are recorded or planned, and I just have to record and edit them, and I'm excited to do that. So I will see you guys next week for our regularly scheduled programming. I hope you have a fabulous and uneventful 2021, except Mitch McConnell, who can choke. Goodbye, everyone!